بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وصلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وصلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. So, Assalamu alaikum everybody. So today, essentially the talk or the Q&A in the event is going to be an introduction to meanings of Salah. Meanings of Salah is actually a genre found in the literature of the Shia, in which they grant inner meaning to the various different components of Salah as well as its overall objective. However, as we know, in our various different types of literature, a lot of these works are highly technical and typically found in the schools of the Al-Fari school or the Shaykh school, which are not exactly introductory in their ability to sort of translate to the common audience. And while they may all have various different types of understandings in regards to the meanings of Salah, overall, they all have one spine and one backbone with regards to what they agree on with regards to the objective and locus of Salah. Hence, we're going to be framing this whole talk around this particular locus and this particular axis, which is going to be an introduction and the equivalent of a master key to this type of literature. And the path we're going to take is going to be the Quran by their interpretation and the Hadith by their understanding, and try to take a literature first approach to things. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to start with a pivotal piece of literature. This is a report from Imam al-Baqir that everybody should essentially have tattooed on their head, and tattooed in their hearts at the very least, right? It's whoever does not know the Salah has rejected our right. So what does this exactly suggest? First of all, it suggests an intrinsic link between Salah and Wilayah. So as a consequence of not knowing the Salah, which is obviously what we're obligated to know in this particular report, it's the idea that one must get to know the Salah in order for it to be accepted and in order for it to not reject their right, which is Wilayah. So here this frames this whole discussion for us, which is there is something about Salah that is intrinsically connected to Wilayah. So I want you guys to essentially just remember this. Whoever does not know the Salah has rejected our right. You must know the Salah. There's a link between Salah and Wilayah. Think of it as a triangle, right? The objective is to know, and there is a link between Salah and Wilayah. But before we even get to Salah, we have to understand what religion is. I know this sounds very Jordan Peterson-y in the sense of like, what is religion? But typically people don't really have definitions of what religion is in the first place, right? We have to begin with the absolute basics and not assume anything. And it's okay, like if I was to ask any, what is a religion? It's fine to not know the sort of, let's just say, technical textbook definition of what religion is. But at the very least, let's have a common language between each other. Because once we define what religion is, we can define what religion is. And then we can also begin to define prayer in relation to that religion, right? So we'll begin with the basics. What is religion and what is our religion? And as we know, we all agree upon a few basics, considering we're all here in this particular front. We agree upon Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, Ajal Allah Faraj al-Sharif, and we agree upon 14 and 5, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be in this room together, right? So let us go into defining religion as per the Arabic language, ad-din, and religion as per the English language as well, to get a fair understanding, considering we are diaspora, we're not exactly in the heartlands, in Iraq or in Iran. So if you go to the slide on the definition of religion. So the meaning of religion, deen in Arabic and in English. And I used Merriam-Webster, even though that's an American and Canadian dictionary. I really like the definition, it was very comprehensive. And then I used a modern standard Arabic definition of religion. Even though we can go into sort of the etymology of deen, right? It also goes in line with various different types of meanings, such as recompense, right? Which is where the word dain comes from. The idea that you owe something, there is a particular debt that you owe to a particular entity, right? But ad-din in general refers to essentially a word for everything that God is worshipped by. So it's not God, it's somebody who has acknowledged as a creator in the first place, acknowledged as a divine in the first place. Now, deen is essentially everything from attitudes to beliefs to practices that God is worshipped by. So as we know, right, once you come into the realm of the divine, like you agree that there is a creator, now you need a way, you need a method to worship that Lord, right? And so that would be a general definition of religion that we can all begin to understand and frame this discussion in, right? And obviously, within the sort of Merriam-Webster definition, which is you can just find online, right? It's an organized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. And obviously, Salah, in its practical form, would be in the practices section. And obviously, within a religion, there'll be beliefs, there'll be attitudes. For example, if you ask a Christian, like, what is their beliefs? You'd ask a Catholic, he'd be like, oh, the Eucharist and various different confessionals and all the like. That'll be within the framework of a way, a method in order to worship the divine, which they've already established as a creator, right? And obviously I put pictures of various different types of acts. Obviously, Ghadir Khum, Karbala, Salah, and Hajj, right? These are various different types of practices and attitudes that we take as individuals who attempt to be practicing within the religion. So, we're going to begin immediately from something that we all recognize. We've all heard this dua 1,000 different times, but nobody has really acknowledged what it's trying to say. So this dua over here, it's اللهم عرفني نفسك فإنك إن لم تعرفني نفسك لم أعرف رسولك. اللهم عرفني رسولك فإنك إن لم تعرفني رسولك لم أعرف حجتك. اللهم عرفني حجتك فإنك إن لم تعرفني حجتك ضللت عن ديني. So up there we got a translation of it. It essentially comes in an interesting report which Zarara is speaking to Imam al-Sadiq. And Imam al-Sadiq was giving various different details with regards to the occultation. And he's mentioning all these trials and tribulations. A majority of the Shia become apostates, various different types of trials. And then he says, how do we sort of survive this? How do we gain salvation? And he says, the one who reads this dua. And obviously, as we know, right, dua in the sort of framework of the Ahlul Bayt is that a dua without action is like a bow without an arrow. There needs to be an actionable step. So in this particular dua, in reality, what the Imam is doing is very, very simple. He's saying, if you want salvation in the occultation, you must work by this framework in the occultation. And as we know, it's laying out a framework. In the occultation, the Shia must know that there is a creator. Allahumma arifni nafsaka. You must know that there is, the divine one, the first, right, that has no start to him, and the end that has no end to him. And then within that realm, you can begin to acknowledge that there might be messengers, there might be prophets that come to you with a message and come to you with a religion, which is an organized set of beliefs, attitudes, and practices. It comes within the message of messengers. So after that, you get the ability to acknowledge the messenger. And obviously the messenger comes with a message. And the conclusion of that message, as per this dua, is to know the Imam of your time. And separation from the Imam of the time, to not know the Imam of the time, means to be misguided from one's religion. Now, this can be interpreted in multiple different ways. Are we misguided from the religion because we don't know the Imam, right? Because he doesn't have the ability to give us the details of our religion, i.e. tell us how to pray, tell us how to fast, tell us how to do Hajj? Or could it mean something else? Regardless, this is a very familiar dua to the average Shia, should be. It's mentioned a lot in Hussainiyat and in events and on social media and the likes, right? And it should be something that we all memorize. And if you haven't memorized it, that's okay, but you should memorize it. So on to the next slide, right? Now we're gonna get an elucidation and a sharh, basically, an explanation, interpretation of this dua from the source himself. We said the dua was given to Zurara from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Now this is from a letter from Imam al-Sadiq to al-Mufaddal ibn Umar, where he just says explicitly, the Imam is what? The religion itself and its pillar. He separates between the two. He says, right? That ad-din was-ad-din rajul. He is both the pillar and the religion. A pillar is a means to what? To upholding that religion. And the religion is the objective, it's the way. So the Imam is both the means, right? And the objective. The Imam guides you to himself. So us as Shia, right, our religion as a whole, what is Islam? It's submission. Submission to who? The Imam of time. And now, as per the general framework in the average mind, right, the Imam, Ghadir Khum, Wilaya is seen as essentially just a belief that comes into place for an individual to grant political and social order. That's very correct. The Imam is there to sit in the seat of the Messenger in terms of Khilafah, in terms of ruling, absolutely. But as we know in our fiqh also, right, we have the ability for a representative, such as a guardian jurist, to do what? To do exactly that, to grant political and social order. Right? So as we know, it's not exactly, right, the totality of the Imam's function. Right? The Imam is framing it entirely differently. He's saying that the way to worshipping God is the Imam. And as we know, if we can just go back to the definitions of religion, we'll go back to the Arabic, sort of modern standard Arabic definition, which is basically gives a general definition of all, which is what? A word for everything that God is worshipped by. So now if we go back to the report by Imam Salah and frame the two together. A word for everything Allah is worshipped by. The Imam is the means by which you worship God. He is the objective. He is where we are trying to head towards. And the Imam is also the pillar to that faith, i.e. he is the means to taking you to himself and maintaining your relationship with him. Right? And now, this is what's being presented in the narrations. We're now going to try to derive that from the Quran in order to clearly see this. Because in order for us to get an understanding of Salah, we need to understand what our religion is. Now we understand what is a religion, right? Everything that God is worshipped by, right? An organized system of beliefs, attitudes and practices. And now we know, right, that to be saved and to be granted salvation in the occultation, one must have what? Cognizance and knowledge and a relationship with their Imam, the proof. And as we know, the Imam said, he is the religion and he is the pillar of the religion. So, as a consequence of that, we can now try to see that in the Quran. And once we see it clearly to some degree, enough of a degree, we're going to try reframing Salah. Because this might be an awkward position for us. Because if you ask the average person, like, what is Salah? They'll say, submission, humility towards the divine creator. All of these are correct statements. They're forms of worship, forms of submission, humility to the Lord. Like, what is bowing? You bow to a king. Who do you prostrate to? You prostrate to somebody that is higher than you. The angels prostrate to Adam. Why? They were suggesting the idea that Adam, as a consequence, is greater than them. For whatever reason. Even though there is like definitions as to why, and there is explanations as to why in the report. In simple terms, the angel said, Adam, you are better than us. Hence, prostration. You're putting yourself in a lowly position towards something greater than you. And bowing, you bow to a king in obedience. Right? So now we know the religion and the pillar of the religion, Sahih al-Asr al-Salah. That is how things are viewed in the reports, and this is the means to salvation in the occultation. Right? So let's go to the Quran now. Let's go to the next slide. So, I'm going to use two ayat that basically we all know, like off the heart. Right? We see this every year. We see this in Eidullah al-Akbar, Eid al-Ghadir. Right? It's the ayah that came before Ghadir Kham and the ayah that came after Ghadir Kham. Right? Which is the ayah of Ya Ayyuhar Rasul. Right? So with regards to this particular ayah, we can synthesize everything that we just presented in the narrations. And as we know, what does Rasulullah say? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? Whatever is in line with the Quran, right, is something of truth, something of light, something of correct belief. Right? So we're going to try to see the congruency and symmetry between what we just presented and the Quran in order for us to go forward. Right? So, Ya Ayyuhar Rasul, Balligh, O Messenger, convey that which has been revealed to you from your Lord. And as we know, we're all Shia here, there is a unanimous understanding. If you're Shia and you're in this room, this came down with Ghadir Kham. Convey what? Convey what has been ordered of you regarding Ali, regarding Bi'at al-Ghadir, regarding the pledge of allegiance of Ghadir, right? For if you do not, you have not conveyed his message. And obviously this ayah came in Hajjatul Wada, came in the final Hajj. It came months before the martyrdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Allah is speaking to the messenger. In fact, he's speaking to him in a reprimanding tone, like almost suggesting the idea that he's threatening him. Obviously, as we know, Rasulullah is larger than to be threatened with. However, this is a message indirectly to who? Us, saying that whatever is about to be revealed now is of high importance. Why? Because the whole message is going to be null and void. And at this point, Rasulullah has revealed nearly the entirety of the Quran. Remember, it's the message, right? فَمَا بَلَّغْتَ رِسَالَةً. What is the Risala? The Quran, Salah, Zakat, Sawm, Hajj. And now, obviously, Rasulullah only had one Hajj, so at that final point, he had revealed all the core obligations that sort of understood by the people of the Qibla. And essentially, Allah is saying, it's all not void. Without Wilayah, without Ali, and for us, without Sahib al-Zaman, the faith is essentially redundant, right? It is just null and void. It's a point binary, 0 or 1. If you want it to be 1, Wilayah. If you want it to be 0, no Wilayah. And then, obviously, the ayah that came after this, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم. It's the ayah in which God says, your religion has been perfected now. The blessing, i.e. the gift of your Lord, which is His religion, His way, right, has been completed. And what? Now the religion has become approved. That means before this day, obviously, it wasn't considered approved. All of this shows us the meanings in the previous report, which is without wilayah, without the pledge of allegiance of Badr, without the amount of time, there is no religion. It is by consequence null and void. Hence, ad-deen was ad-deen rajul. To us, it's sahib al-zaman. This gives us now context for the dua that we have of Allah ma'arif min nafsik, which goes down to what? I wish to know my Lord, so that I may know my messenger, so that I may know the peak of the message, which is what? Ya ayyuha Rasul, balligh, or Lord convey. And what was it he conveyed? Wilayah. To us, wilayah is sahib al-zaman. So now we know what our religion is. It is everything that we worship our Lord by, a set of attitudes, beliefs, practices by which we worship. And what is that for the Shia faith? Is very, very simple. Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. So now that we know what our religion is, now we can contextualize Salah in line with what our religion is. So now all forms of worship have to be in this context. All forms of worship are forms of wilayah. Salah, zakat, sawm, and everything in between is forms and expressions and means to strengthening our wilayah. And we see this clearly in this particular report that we find in Tafsir al-Burhan. I only chose this particular report, even though we have reports of the same meaning. I chose it because it's the most comprehensive, it's the clearest. But the Imam is just saying it outright and explicitly, where somebody has quite clearly heard very similar reports, and he asked Imam Sadiq. I'll read it out for the sake of, barakah. He says, I said to Abu Abdullah, which is Imam Sadiq, the kunya of Imam Sadiq, if you wish to get into realm of reports. So the reports typically always have the kunya of the Imam. So it's good that when you familiarize yourself with reports, that you know the kunyas of the Imam, so you know which Imam is being spoken to. For example, Abi Ja'far would be Imam Baqir, Abu Abdullah would be Imam Sadiq, so on and so forth. Each one has a kunya. So here, this is Imam Sadiq, who's our sixth Imam, right? So Dawood bin Kathir asked him, are you the prayer in the Book of Allah? He's quite clearly sat in Kufa somewhere and he's heard one Kufa say, by the way, you know the Imam of the time? He's Salah, he's Zakat, he's Sawm, and he's everything. And he's quite clearly not being able to contextualize this. So he goes to the Imam himself and he says, oh Dawood, we are the prayer in the Book of Allah, mighty majestic. And we are the Zakat, and we are the fast, and we are the Hajj. These are all practices. Remember the Merriam-Webster definition? Beliefs, attitudes, and practices. We have a belief in wilayah, we have an attitude towards wilayah. What is an attitude that we find in conventionally? What do we say? وَلِيُنَّ مَنْ وَالَاكُمْ وَحَتُوَنَّ مَنْ عَادَاكُمْ. That's the attitude that I take. That I befriend whoever is a friend of you, and I'm an enemy of whoever is enemy of you. And here is the practices section, where even the practices are forms of wilayah. Salah, zakat, sawm, hajj, so on and so forth. We can even define this in terms of jihad, in terms of enjoying good and forbidding evil. All of them have a direct connection to and are forms of wilayah, obviously from different angles. So that's another thing that we now know. Our religion is Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. Our practices are directly linked to Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. So next. So So now we have another report, and I chose this report because it's actually quite interesting, and I'm using it to also clarify a specific principle when discussing hadith. And obviously, I feel like it's very, very important, especially for this particular youth organization specifically focused on hadith, is to understand some of the principles in reading hadith, which is very, very simple. Right? To read hadith, you must understand the principles behind reading hadith, the principles behind interpretation, the principles behind understanding. And this is a report that says the same meaning but implicitly. There is a principle in hadith which is called the principle of luminosity and the cycles of the moon. Obviously that was an absolute mouthful, because luminosity means, how bright something is. Cycles of the moon is something cosmic. Obviously a moon starts with a crescent, ends with a full moon. How does that all link? The only thing that you can see is a crescent's less luminous than a full moon, right? However, the Imams have explained this principle as such, which is this, is that they speak in different tongues and in different levels of clarity for various different reasons. I'll give you one of the least luminous forms of reports. When an Imam just outright says something in order to misdirect somebody for the sake of his life. For example, we have various different types of reports. They exist even in the books of our opponents, where our Imams, for example, praise the killers of Fatima. Incredibly invalid belief, incredibly false belief. But the Imam said it. Why? Security reasons. It's quite clear. The Imams lived under the rule of Ben Umayyah and Ben Abbas. Some people are going to try to determine what their beliefs are regarding certain individuals in order to then use it as a means to justify killing them or their followers. So this would be something that is not even a crescent. This would be a night in which the moon is not even present. The Imam has to misdirect. Sometimes the Imams speak in another way, where they're suggesting the truth, but indirectly and implicitly. Why? Because the crowd is not yet ready to fully understand what they're saying. The prerequisites are not there. That could be for various different reasons. It could be due to a long period of an era of taqiyya, where the Shia have become accustomed to the ways and modes of thinking of the people. And that's okay. We live in a society at the end of the day, right? You become accustomed to whatever the religion is in whichever place you live, in whichever time you live, right? Hence, if somebody has a specific understanding of something and the Imam shifts it too quickly, it can become uncomfortable. It can become awkward. It can even sometimes sound blasphemous, right? So, sometimes the Imam says something implicitly and wishes for their Shia to actually derive it, to reflect on it and then see, he said exactly what he would have said explicitly but implicitly. All it requires is a few prerequisite steps. This is a report like that. And as we saw in the previous report, just make them see it one more time. The report of Dawood ibn Kathir is a more luminous report. He just explicitly says it, right? We are the Salah, we are the Sawm, we are the Zakat, we are this, we are that. Which is, in practice, the objective of all these particular forms of worship is means of strengthening wilayah, is means of connecting to wilayah. And in the next report, which is a report in which Hisham al-Hakam asks Imam Sadiq, give me the reason behind Salah. Because Salah happens 5 times a day, 3 times, right? 3 times in a day for us, but 5 separate Salahs. And typically speaking, it can come in, let's just say, less fortunate situations where we literally might be at work. We might have to make things awkward, especially living in the West. Wherever it may be. It might even be in the middle of trade, right? It might be in the middle of an argument. You still have an obligation to pray at the first time, or at the very sight of the obligation, right? So why has God decided to just make our lives somewhat miserable, for lack of a better term? And Imam Sadiq says the reason quite simply. This is a very long report. I'm going to leave it up, obviously, so you guys can read it. But we'll go to the essence of the report, which is quite simple. Imam Sadiq says that the reason behind Salah is so the issues of previous nations that happened to this nation. And what is the issues of previous nations? The previous nations forgot their prophets. The previous nations didn't take their prophets seriously, and then they effaced their books. They corrupted their religions, and eventually forgot their prophets and forgot the truths behind their messages. So Allah prescribed salah as a means of what? Forcing the ummah 5 times a day to call Ashhadu anna Muhammadun Rasulullah, essentially, where the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa will not be forgotten. And what is the name of Rasulullah? A reminder of his message. He is the messenger, and obviously it will be a reminder of his remembrance, which is his message. And as we just did in our little derivation class, we derived the religion to be the Imam, the consequence, and the final outcome of the message of Rasulullah is Ya ayyuha Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik, wa in lam taf'al, fama ballaghta risalah. O Messenger, convey that which has been revealed to you from your Lord regarding Ali, regarding Wilayah, regarding the Imams from Ali Muhammad. And if you do not, you have not conveyed his message. So what's the final outcome of the message? Wilayah Muhammad and Wala Muhammad. So if Salah is a means of reminding us of Rasulullah and his message, by consequence, implicitly, this report is saying it's a reminder of Wilayah. So this is a less luminous report of what was said before. A more palatable way of saying Nahnu Salat, Nahnu Siyam, Nahnu. All it required was just a little bit of thought. But the two fit in to make one canvas. All the forms of worship are forms of Wilayah. That we may remember Wilayah, as I brought up there. Now, what does this look like practically? Let's go to the next. So this is going to be the part in which we take snapshots of what the meanings of Salah actually lead you to in terms of outcome. And like we said, this whole talk is an introduction to meanings of Salah. We don't wish to actually discuss the meanings of Salah. We wish to give people the master key and the ability to be able to do that research for themselves. In the Quran and the Hadith, somebody wishes to go and do the research and gather reports on Salah and to create a canvas. But we're going to give a few practical snapshots of what the consequences of this belief is. That the Imam is the religion, is pillar, and that all forms of worship are Wilayah. That we end up directing ourselves to the Imam. So we'll start with a piece of literature we all know, Da'anutta. Every Friday, if you go Bahrain in the villages, you will hear it as if it was the Adhan. From one home to another, from one masjid to another. And there's the one line in which everybody should be focused on, which is أين وجه الله الذي إليه يتوجه الأولياء. Where is the face of God to which the friends of God turn towards? And why is that important? Obviously, the turn towards, we're going to focus on considering this directly into Salah. However, I want you guys to focus on a few lines before, where we say, where is the one who exalts the friends of Allah and humiliates the enemies? Which means it's a direct consequence of the zuhur of Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. There's going to be friends, awliya, and there will be enemies. A few lines later, we get a definition of who the friends are in terms of their essence, their beliefs. Where is their beliefs? They turn and they direct towards Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. And obviously we all, have a belief in Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. We all turn to him in times of need. We all turn towards him for guidance. As expected, it's intuitive, it's as an individual would do towards his mother and father. When you have a problem, you go to somebody higher up than you, somebody more authoritative, somebody who takes care of you. However, now that we know that Salah is framed in the context of Wilayah, we get another report which is in Fiqh al-Rida that combines between Da'anutta and the concept of Tawajjah, the concept of direction. And this is directing yourself in mind and in heart and in spirit, and practical worship, which is Imam al-Rida is beginning to give the intention of Salah. Obviously, everybody knows the types of intentions you have in the Risalat of the Maraja. Here Imam al-Rida says something quite interesting. So at the beginning, you intend to remember Allah, and then you remember the Messenger. As we saw in the previous report, what was one of the reasons behind Salah? To remember Rasulullah, by consequence remember his message. And we said that if you focus on the concept of his message, the concept of his remembrance, the peak and pinnacle of all his wilayah, here the Imam says explicitly, it's a more luminous report. And then what do? Place one of the Imams between your eyes. And this would be the Imam of the age, the face of God himself, Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. And this is a direction in terms of mind, in terms of spirit. In the same way that we physically direct ourselves towards something material, something created. Where's the Qibla towards? Masjid al-Haram. What's in the peak of Masjid al-Haram? Al-Kaaba. That represents what? House of God. We, in heart and in spirit, direct ourselves towards our religion, direct ourselves to the face of God. And through this definition, we are, inshallah, by consequence, as per Da'anubba, we become of the ones who Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman exalts in the Dhuhr, if we are to take their literature seriously. So this is a snapshot of how the meanings of Salah can change your Salah and practical worship. Now what does the bowing mean? What does the prostration mean? What does Surah Al-Fatiha mean? What's in the heart of Surah Al-Fatiha? There is no Salah without Fatiha al-Kitab, as per the reports. Like you can't pray without Fatiha al-Kitab. What's the essence of Surah Al-Fatiha? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Even Surah Al-Fatiha, by the tafsir of Mohammed, is to ask God, is to supplicate to God, to achieve what? As-sirat al-mustaqim. And you say after what? Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Oh God, to you we worship, and to you we ask for help. And obviously, if we look at the tafsir of Muhammad, what are we asking God for help for? In the ability to worship. We are proclaiming that we wish to worship you. And like we saw in the really beautiful Canadian dictionary definition of religion, religion is what? A set of attitudes, practices, and beliefs. So we acknowledge there's a creator while we are being worshipped. Right? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And we ask you for help in order to worship you, because none of us are capable of worshiping God. And then we ask for the way, which is religion. And what did we define the religion to be? Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman. Now we're asking for the religion, we're supplementing for it in Surah Al-Fatiha. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path. Oh God, we ask you to guide us to the straight path. And as per the tafsir of Muhammad, as per the narration of Muhammad, Aliyun, Aliyun, Ali. And by consequence, Al-Hujjat ibn Hassan. Even the Fatiha, the obligatory Fatiha of your prayer is by consequence asking for what? The face of God, your religion. You're seeing now all of these snapshots, all of these reports are painting one picture. Sahib al-Zaman is the be-all end-all. He is the objective, he is the means. He is the way in which we worship the Lord. Your Salah is now in the context of Wilayah, in the context of Al-Hujjat ibn Hassan. And this would be an ability to strengthen your Salah. And as we know, if you go into sort of the etymology of the word Salah, just as a quick tangent, it comes from the word Sila, as per, many different linguists and the likes. Salah comes from the word Sila, which means to connect to something. Hence, what do we say? Salat al-Rahim, to connect to, your family and the likes. Connect to the womb. Supposedly whoever came out of the womb, they're connected by blood. It's to establish a connection. So Salah is establishing a connection to God. How do you establish a connection to God? Ta'ala tells me, أَيْنَ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ الَّذِي إِلَيْهِ يَتَوَجَّهُ الْأَوْلِيَاءُ. Where is the face of God to whom the friends of God turn towards? And in Fiqh al-Rida, what does it say? And place between your two eyes. Just as a quick tangent, just to give you the depth of what these statements are saying. Two eyes doesn't mean your physical two eyes. Sahib Zaman's on cold. He's not exactly between us today. This refers to the belief in the concept of the basira, which is the idea that every believer, every human has a possibility of having two eyes in their hearts, to which if activated, they are capable of viewing and perceiving the world and reality through light. So place the Imam between your heart, between your mind, between your spirit. This is what meanings of Salah will do to your Salah if you allow it to reframe your whole religion for you. So now I'm going to end off with a report from Amir al-Mu'mineen, considering we start with Ali, we end with Ali always. He is the be-all and all. When we speak of Sahih Zaman, we speak of Ali ibn Abi Talib by consequence always. And this is a report, and I'll read it in full. And it's from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. It can be found in Bahar al-Anwar in volume 41. And I'll read it out. So narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, who said, I was with our master, the commander of the faithful, peace be upon him, when he saw a man standing in prayer. He was walking in Kufa. Could be in Medina. Right? We don't really have the context of this particular report. And he saw a man praying. And it's highly likely that this man did nothing wrong. He prayed as per he understood prayer to be, in terms of the physical form. And he said to him, "Oh you, do you know the inner meaning of prayer?" And he says to this person, "Do you know the ta'wil of salah?" The man said, "Oh my master." So the first thing you have to acknowledge, he says, "Ya Mawla." This person is Shi'i, he believes in the masterhood of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Man kuntu Mawla, fahada Ali Mawla. So this person is not exactly ignorant of Amir al-Mu'mineen's station. Does prayer have an inner meaning other than worship? So he gave the conventional sort of understanding what is salah. I'm just worshipping God. I'm bowing, I'm prostrating, I'm saying Surah Al-Fatiha, I'm doing my tasbih, if it's the third and fourth. And he said, yes, by the one who sent Muhammad of prophethood, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allah did not send his prophet with any matter. So what did we say the Merriam-Webster definition was? Attitudes, beliefs, and practices that creates an organized system by which we worship God. Allah did not send his prophet with any matter, except that it has a resemblance, an inner meaning, and a revealed dimension. And obviously, the translation is a bit weak, but it doesn't matter, considering that's not our kind of focus. The idea that there is various degrees of understanding the practices of your faith. And all of that then points to worship. And at that point he realized, oh, my prayer lacks soul. It is a body without a soul. It's a form without a meaning. So what does he end up saying? The man said, teach me what it is, O my master. He understood it's time to get my understanding from Ali. It's time to fulfill my pledge. And as Rasulullah said after, "Man kuntu mawla fahada ali mawla," he says, and take your understanding of religion after me from the one whom I am holding his hand. And so he said, teach me, O my master. So this works as an introduction to the meanings of salah, and it is also a call to action to understand the Quran by their interpretation, which is of the fulfillment of the pledge of Qadr, that you take tafsir from Muhammad, and to also understand the hadith, and to not take it superficially. Like we saw, some of the reports had deeper meaning than one may, perceive. They could have just taken that report like the remembrance of Rasulullah and not seen wilayah, but with a little bit of reflection, a little bit of depth, you can begin to see that a report can mean far more than what just the words suggest. So these are call to action. Grant your salah some soul. Turn towards Sahib al-Zaman, for he is the religion and he is the pillar of the religion. So we'll do a quick review. So the review. The Imam of the age is the religion and its pillar. So he is the way in which we worship God. There is no other way. Right? He is Babullah alladhi minhu yu'ta. He is the door of God, by which none can enter except for him. And this means in all matters. Every single matter, like we said. The Imam begins listing all his practices. He says, wilayah. Salah is a form of salah. It's a form of salah to who? Sahib al-Zaman, by which we worship them. That applies to every single faith. That means this isn't just a call to action to meanings of salah. It's a call to action of meanings of fasting, meanings of hajj, meanings of enjoying good and forbidding evil, meanings of everything that relates to religion, which is everything. As it says in regards to the Quran, تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, is a clarity for all things. All forms of worship are with that. Even if you may not know it yet, it's a call to get to know it. It's fine to not know something as long as you know there's something to be known. And second of all, the locus of salah, the direction of salah, of your mind and your heart. Just as we direct ourselves to the Kaaba physically, it's also created. It's a home that symbolizes a place in which God resides. What does Sahib al-Zaman represent? And to him we direct our hearts and our minds. So on that note, I'll end it. But also, I wish to give you guys a little something from my favorite series, which is Mukhtar. Obviously, it has a connection to sort of my childhood. But I'm going to show you guys a particular clip. And this particular clip, I want you to take all the information that we took from the review. And I want you guys to now contextualize this clip under the information that you have. Try to reframe Salah in line with what the meaning looks like within it. وصلى الله على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين